Title locked, my husband mocked me as a burden in front of his boss. His boss took my hand and said, "I've loved you for years." The first time I heard my husband call me a burden, he didn't say it to my face. He said it to his boss, across a dinner table, while I was sitting right there refilling his water glass, like I hadn't heard a word. "She's just a lot to manage lately," Marcus said, laughing like it was nothing. Honestly, sometimes I think about how much easier things would be without the extra weight. Daniel Voss, the man whose signature could make or break my husband's career, didn't laugh. He just looked at me, and something in his face told me he already knew more about my marriage than I did. Before I tell you how this played out, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe if you believe the people who underestimate you today will regret it tomorrow. My name is Vanessa Cole. I'm 34. 6 years ago, I built an interior design firm from nothing, just me, a laptop, and a client list I'd begged for. Marcus joined a year later, handling the business side while I handled the creative work. On paper, we were partners. 50-50. A power couple, people called us. That night at dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Marcus had just landed Daniel Voss as our biggest client, yet a 5-property renovation deal that could triple our revenue. I'd dressed up. I'd smiled through 3 courses. I'd told myself the tension I'd felt at home for the last few months was just stress. Then Marcus made his joke. And Daniel didn't laugh. Instead, halfway through dessert, Daniel excused himself to take a call and gestured for me to follow him toward the restaurant's back hallway. I thought it was business. I was wrong. "Vanessa," he said, his voice low, "I need to tell you something, and I don't know if this is my place, but I can't sit there and watch this anymore." He reached out and took my hand. I remember how cold his fingers were, how steady his eyes stayed on mine. "I've loved you for years," he said, "since the first renovation project. I never said anything because you were married. But Vanessa, Marcus isn't just talking behind your back. He's been planning to cut you out of the company. Legally, he's been meeting with a lawyer for months." For a moment, the restaurant noise disappeared completely. Just the hum of blood in my ears. "What are you talking about?" I said, though some part of me, some quiet, exhausted part, already believed him. Daniel told me everything. Marcus had approached him 3 weeks earlier, pitching a restructured partnership where Daniel would invest directly into a new entity, one that listed Marcus as sole owner. He told Daniel that my role was temporary, that I was emotionally unstable lately, that he was already drafting paperwork to dissolve our original 50-50 partnership on a technicality, claiming our original filing had never been properly notarized. I felt my whole chest go numb. Because he was right. I never had gotten it properly filed. I'd been too busy building the business to double-check the paperwork my own husband had promised to handle. But that wasn't even the worst part. Daniel told me Marcus had already asked him to wire the first investment payment directly into a personal account, not the company account. Nearly $400,000. If that money moved before I found out, there would be nothing left to fight for. No company. No proof. No claim. I walked back to that table and sat down across from my husband like nothing had happened. I picked up my fork. I smiled at his boss's joke about the wine list. And inside, something that had been sleeping for months finally woke up completely. Because here's what Marcus didn't know. 2 months earlier, after catching a strange late-night message on his phone, a woman's name saved under a fake contact, I'd already started quietly protecting myself. I'd hired my own lawyer. Not for divorce, not yet. Just to understand exactly what I owned and what I didn't. What I'd learned in that first meeting was terrifying. My lawyer had confirmed our original partnership filing was, in fact, incomplete. Marcus had never finished the paperwork he swore he'd handled 2 years ago. Legally, as of that moment, I owned nothing on paper. Everything, the company name, the client contracts, even the design portfolio with my name on every project, technically belonged to him. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd lost before I even knew I was in a fight. Then, 3 days after that meeting, I found something in an old shared drive Marcus had forgotten I still had access to. A folder labeled Restructure Final. Inside were drafts of new incorporation papers. Dated, signed, everything he needed to legally erase me from the business I built, sitting there, waiting for one final signature. He hadn't sent it yet. But he was close. That night at dinner, listening to him call me a burden while his boss held my hand under the table linens minutes later and told me the truth, I finally understood something. Marcus wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to leave me with nothing. And he had no idea that for the last 2 months, I hadn't just been surviving his coldness. I'd been quietly building something of my own, something he'd never see coming until it was already too late to stop. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls before Marcus even woke up. The first was to my lawyer. The second was to a forensic accountant. The third, the one that would end up changing everything, was to Daniel Voss. Daniel picked up on the second ring. I need everything you know, I told him. Every conversation, every email, every dollar amount. If Marcus is planning to erase me from this company, I need proof before he finishes. There was a pause. Then he said something I didn't expect. I already started pulling it together last night. I couldn't sleep after that dinner. Over the next 4 days, while Marcus went about his mornings, whistling in the shower, kissing my forehead like nothing was wrong, I built a case against him piece by piece. My lawyer confirmed the gap in our original partnership filing was real, but fixable if I moved fast enough. Because the company had operated as a de facto 50-50 partnership for 6 years. With my name on client contracts, my signature on vendor agreements, and my design work as the entire foundation of our reputation, we had grounds to file an emergency claim establishing equitable ownership. It wouldn't be instant, but it would freeze anything Marcus tried to do the moment we filed it. The forensic accountant found the second problem. The $400,000 Marcus wanted Daniel to wire wasn't just a shady restructuring move, it was being routed through an account that hadn't been disclosed on any of our joint tax filings. An account opened 8 months earlier, around the same time that strange contact had appeared on his phone. I didn't confront him about the affair. Not yet. I needed him comfortable. I needed him certain that I still had no idea what was coming. On the 5th day, Daniel called an emergency meeting with Marcus, the final signing meeting for the 5-property deal. Marcus arrived confident, practically glowing, ready to sign away my future without me in the room. Except I was already there, sitting in the conference room when he walked in. I watched the color drain from his face in real time. "Vanessa, what are you?" "Sit down, Marcus." Daniel's voice was calm, professional, final. "We need to talk about the paperwork you sent me last week." What followed was the longest 20 minutes of my life, and the most satisfying. Daniel laid it out first, how Marcus had pitched him a restructured entity that quietly erased my ownership. Then my lawyer, on speakerphone, explained the emergency filing we'd submitted that morning. One that legally froze all company assets and contracts pending a formal ownership review. Then the forensic accountant walked through the undisclosed account, the timeline, the withdrawals. Marcus sat there, jaw tightening, trying to find an angle, a defense, anything. There wasn't one. "You told your boss I was a burden," I finally said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "You told him I was emotionally unstable, temporary, easy to remove. But you're the one who forgot to finish the paperwork. You're the one who tried to move investor money into a personal account without disclosure. That's not a marital dispute anymore, Marcus. That's investor fraud. Vanessa, I can explain, you don't get to explain. Not to me." Daniel leaned forward. "And as of this morning, the firm is pulling out of any deal structured through you individually. If Vanessa's ownership claim holds, which, based on what I've seen, it will, our 5-property contract goes through her, not you." I watched 6 years of my husband's carefully built confidence collapse in front of the one person whose approval he'd built his entire identity around. The company didn't just survive, it thrived. The emergency ownership claim held, backed by 6 years of contracts, client testimonials, and design work that only had my name on it. Marcus's name came off everything within 3 months. The affair, once it became relevant to the divorce filing, Sealed the rest, no judge sympathizes with a husband who tries to defraud his own wife out of a company she built while secretly funneling money to someone else. Daniel and I never became anything more than what he was that night in the hallway honest. I wasn't interested in trading one man's manipulation for another man's declaration, no matter how well-timed it was. But I respected him for telling me the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent and watch the deal close. Marcus tried to reach out months later. A voicemail. A text. Something about how none of it was supposed to go this far. How he still cared. How we could talk things through. I didn't reply. Some people only understand what they had once it's gone. Marcus understood exactly what he'd lost the day he sat in that boardroom and realized the woman he called a burden was the only reason he'd ever had anything worth calling his. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't need anyone's permission to build what came next.